Wonderful.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is just about morning. We have three very experienced people here on the platform to talk on the subject of personalization, driving the modern retail experience, what's right about it, what's wrong about it, and I think with some pretty good tips and hints that you will pick up on the way. You see the panelists that we have here, just a few more details about them. Marcus Hemsley is the creative director of the Fountain Partnership, founder of as well. It's a multi-global Google award-winning digital marketing agency, and Marcus takes a forensic approach to digital marketing, making sure that the campaigns are driven by fact and not by fluff. Clients include Roman Originals, Roseland Furniture, and Casio watches, plus one or two others we can't mention amongst the Silicon Valley giants. And then we have James Davey in the middle here, who's Managing Director of Digital Blueprint. It's a board-level marketing and multi-channel operation with over 20 years experience, which James has developing and implementing marketing and digital strategies for retailers and brands such as Bremont Watches, New Look, and B&Q. And finally, we have Dickon Doe, who is the a vice president at Capgemini. His career has been spent transforming businesses using big data and advanced analytics to deliver brilliant customer outcomes, it says here. And his brand experience includes British Airways, HSBC, and dunnhumby. So let's quickly kick off. We're going to do about 20 minutes, and then there'll be a chance for you to ask any questions if you want to. And first of all, personalization was once, I think, accepted to be very special, as indeed the name implies. Has it now become so commonplace that it's in danger of being taken for granted and even ignored by the consumer because there is simply so much of it? James, you first.
Well, I think there's kind of two sides to this. One is, yes, it works. I think personalization is the holy grail for many businesses, or what they believe it is, the one-to-one conversation. But let's be honest, who really wants to be followed around by adverts time and time again showing the same product that you may have bought 2 days ago? The black box technology that exists, that for me is not personalization. That is an attempt at marketing because it is so cheap that ultimately it works on a return on investment. But for me, that's not actually true personalization, but it does absolutely work. I can see a couple of people around the room that are personalization experts. They run businesses that do personalization. So it's interesting that they're going to shoot me down later, that's fine. No, I think it can work, but you have to really focus on getting the details right for me.
Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be taken for granted, to be honest. I think it should be seamless. You shouldn't notice it.
No.
I mean, if you go back to sort of 101 marketing, right? Right message, right person, right time. And time is the big one, I think. I enjoy a curry, but if I see a Facebook ad for a curry in the morning, I'm not going to be particularly happy about that. And I think that's the big thing is, a bit of audience participation here. I mean, who likes to be sold to? Show of hands. One person. Brilliant. But who here likes to go shopping? So if it's seamless with actually what we're experiencing, and true personalization, I think can work very well. So it almost should be taken for granted because you notice it when it is out of context.
Dickon?
So I suppose it's ubiquitous, isn't it? And there's still quite a lot of organisations that aren't very good at it, but they should be getting better. Mountains of data that can be used to do it. We're moving towards this kind of world of marketing moments in time, as opposed to kind of big strategic plays and so on. So I think yes, it does work, and it can be demonstrated to work in the numbers. My sort of theory though is that when it comes to understanding consumers and trying to understand what consumers want and need, there's not a lot of effort there. So whereas we used to use insight in order to understand audiences and then understand how we might want to respond to them, now it's a continuously on flow of information, and people are just continuously bombarded with it. Often, I think, to the detriment of the brands that are doing that. In lots of companies, there doesn't seem to be anybody actually thinking about that. There doesn't seem to be anyone thinking about the impact on you as a consumer. Most recently, I was with HSBC. A lot of worry really about whether or not consumers are going to find this stuff interesting or useful. It's stuff that we would like to see because we'd like them to buy it, not whether it's something particularly useful for them at that moment in time.
Is that down to laziness on the part of retailers?
No, I think it's down to the speed of change, actually. So James has got dozens and dozens and dozens of applications that you can plug into Shopify, for instance. You can decide tomorrow that you're going to change your model, but there isn't always a lot of strategy around what you're going to plug in, why you're going to use it, and how that actually changes the customer experience. And I think that's the problem. We've got to come up a bit from, the immediacy, which has to happen, to a bit more strategic thinking around how we're going to get there.
Okay.
I think there's a question there around, actually. I think personalisation exists, but I don't think it's actually personal yet. I think I actually slightly disagree on the laziness piece, because I think, having been a marketeer and actually possibly have been occasionally lazy in terms of implementation, but no, it's far too easy because the media is so cheap. I come back to that point of, if the ROI is there, you don't dig as deep as you possibly should. So therefore, you're not actually making it personal to the user. But I think you're right, things are changing so fast. And actually what I am seeing in the industry is more businesses starting to, I'll see it around here, the AI thing is kind of out in the wild. I don't think AI truly exists, but there is a piece of
It does
algorithm.
It
It
does
does
AI
here.
here,
There's
apparently,
lots
James,
of
so yeah.
Excel spreadsheets with stuff underneath.
Yeah.
No, that's a bit blasé. But there is a little bit about digging into that speed of change can make that change for retail.
Tell me, how easy is it to recognize the point at which personalization becomes really intrusive? I mean, what are the businesses where personalization works best? And are there any where it actually ought to be avoided completely?
Is that one to me, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously where it works well is retail. I mean, Amazon, I think, lots of people have accepted that, Amazon personalise what we do. We're all very loyal to Amazon. Well, there was a brilliant tweet that went viral a few months ago about someone who bought a toilet seat from Amazon and then was followed by toilet seats. And it was something along the lines of, "Dear Amazon, I bought this toilet seat because I needed a new toilet seat. I don't desire toilet seats, I don't have a toilet seat fetish. Please stop following me around."
But some of us like a nice gallery of toilet seats in our living room.
Well, you speak for yourself, James. And actually, if Amazon knew that about you, and followed you around, then that is true personalisation. I think Marcus over there from Spoon Guru talked about actually yesterday of hyper-personalisation, that a lot of people saying they're doing personalisation, but it's just segmentation, it's basic segmentation. And it goes back to that other piece about marketeers being lazy. I mean, quite frankly, a lot of them are. They don't want to actually really focus on the details, look at the outcomes, draw out good funnels. A lot of them actually just want to just bombard people because actually it's a little bit easier to do that.
Yeah, James?
And we are still in its infancy. Let's be honest, e-commerce is still, everyone says that, e-commerce is killing the high street. It's still only 18% of transactions in 2018. So, there is something to be said. E-commerce is still in the UK quite an infant. And for us to start understanding the data behind it, there's a whole new world of people that have to come into the market to actually help build that premise. Someone told me yesterday from one of the startups across the way, 25,000 data science jobs are unfulfilled in Europe. And that is what is going to have to be fulfilled in order for us to actually understand how, algorithmic kind of processing and machine learning can deliver personalization, because it has to come to, as Marcus said, one-to-one hyper-personalization for it to be truly real.
Yeah,
is my kind of perception.
I think that's where we are at the minute. You've got a whole sort of conflict in marketing of madmen versus maths men. The madmen of old, like the big ideas and the branding, but actually we need the maths men in to actually get the personalization to work. And there's sort of a conflict between the two, which actually is why you get things like even with Amazon toilet seat following people around when they don't need it.
And I mean, are there any where personalization works really, really well? I mean, where you can put a big tick in the box and say, this is fantastic, and this is any particular area of retail where it would work particularly well?
I think until we get to one-to-one, there's still a long way to go. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's that timing piece as well. I'll be followed for products. Actually, it's not the right time for me to buy. They've got the right message to the right person, but not the right time.
And what's stopping you get to that one-to-one sort of ideal position? Is it anything to do with GDPR, a lack of ability perhaps to actually build profiles of people to the extent that you would like, that it can be genuinely one-to-one targeting?
No, I mean, Dickens probably better talk about GDPR actually, but if you've consented, then it shouldn't be an issue. But
well, no, I think I'm a big fan of GDPR actually. So for the fundamental reason that I don't think enough people think about it. I don't think about what they're putting into the net, what's being made available, how it might be utilised, and so on. I think it's a good example of information being used poorly, though. So I get a lot of things. So a couple of us on this panel are from Norwich, just by the by. We could talk about Delia Smith and Alan Partridge and stuff like that after. But so I get loads of really rubbish advertising for stuff like PPI, with people in Norwich are getting payouts for PPI. All it makes me think is, right, so obviously my business, I know that you're able to locate me, but actually now that you're locating me for some cheesy PPI situation, perhaps I should be changing my settings to try and take myself off the grid and get myself unavailable to you for advertising purposes. That has an impact on everybody that's trying to locate me for quite reasonable purposes, and so on as well. So I think there are plenty of examples of it going wrong. And in terms of going wrong, my other thought would be, and as an analytics sort of guy, you might be surprised to hear me say this, but it's when it becomes an experience. That's where most of it goes wrong, actually. Yeah. So we got the facts, but we've got to turn that into something that people actually want to consume. I bought a bike recently. I bought it from Evans. I really like Evans. Their customer service in store is fabulous, that kind of thing. They bought a piece of French technology that's got scrolling ads based on things I've looked at on their website, and it pops up everywhere I go. I've now bought my bike and all my bits and pieces. But this scrolling of offers is incredibly distracting when I'm trying to read the news on the Guardian website every morning. So there's just this continual scrolling. It's really bloody irritating. So I feel my brand relationship with that organisation is in decline. And I'm on the 540-day retargeting list, so it's continual, and I'll have a year and a half of it before I finally get rid of it. Right?
You're not passionate about that bit at all, are you?
No, I'm not.
You can just clear cookies. I
think that's the biggest problem because from a metrics perspective, you know it's working. So from a metrics perspective, you say you should definitely do loads of retargeting. But again, it's this point, we don't think about the consumer impact of doing it.
And that would be the organisation's response. We think it's working from a metrics point of view.
Well, so there are people that are charged with metrics, there are people that are charged with customer experience. They're not often the same people. And even if they are, eventually they're driven to how are you spending the money, how are you providing a return. Metrics is an interesting one. It drives a lot of poor decision making in lots of parts of businesses, not just.
So we talked about worst case and best case, but is there a general rule for finding the actual balance between customer comfort and an improved experience? You've talked about worst case for getting one-to-one wrong and the ideal scenario for getting it right. But how do you judge in each area of the retail sector what is the right balance between those two markets?
What you measure you can improve. It goes back to the metrics, and it's just using the metrics in the right way. I mean, the market will tell you if you're advertising and the way you're personalising it is off. That's just how it's got to be. Unfortunately, you are going to have to upset a few people in various different types of tests. And then you're going to find that sweet spot. So it's going to have to be trial and error, unfortunately.
But is that the point, though? So if it's a test and you upset a few people for a short amount of time during your test,
yes,
that's one thing. But just saying we're going 540 days and we're just going to pummel these guys into submission.
Well, I mean, the thing I love about the 540 days, most people don't know that. I think the default setting is 30 days, or on Google remarketing, I think it's 180 for Facebook. But actually, it's a great opportunity to use a lot of content and tell a story. And actually, if someone does click on that ad, then put them onto a different remarketing or retargeting list and try and get as personalised as possible. It's going to be difficult, but at least you're doing it on their reactions. And obviously, getting that sort of feedback that will actually on various news sites, perhaps don't do it if it's scrolling around and it's distracting people, but it's going to have to be getting that data back.
It's the balance between brand and commerciality. So in any retailer, we're still a siloed business. Retail, having sat on the board of different retailers, we are still a siloed business. As Dickon alluded to earlier. And actually that balance between brand and commerciality very rarely exists, or in fact the conversations can be around a board table quite fractious. We are losing customers, our net promoter score is going down, our customer satisfaction score is going down. Why? And I'm sorry I'm going to call them out, but we've spent £100,000 this month on Criteo. And Criteo are sending you the same ads with no creative control. The product is probably right from the stuff you've viewed, you've seen, whatever, but that brand resonance of why are we here, why do we do what we do, it's not all about promotional discounts. John Lewis this morning have gone out with a fairly significant statement, which is, a big surprise to the market. And one of their key points is around the promotional nature of the marketplace, which we can't get away from. That is exactly the case. But they are probably one of the brands that I personally would have sat back and said they are maintaining or trying to maintain that brand resonance. Look at the ad that went out a couple of weeks ago. It is groundbreaking it's a non-Christmas ad. People yesterday on the main stage were talking about emotion in TV advertising. It's really, really impactful. Where is that in personalisation? Personalisation almost can, you're talking about the maths men and the mad men. Part of me slightly disagrees. It shouldn't always be maths, because that why are we who we are? Why do we buy into that business? It's really still important.
Well, Marcus, you talked a bit about this, but what is the art of actually scaling successfully? How does your decision vary from product to product? I mean, are there some, where you would do the big blitz and actually hit everyone? And are there some where you start off very small and then scale up? And how do you judge which to use? Is it depending on the product? Is it depending on the amount of money you've got to spend on marketing, or what?
Yeah, so I believe in goals-based marketing. So with our clients, we always begin with the end in mind. So it actually depends on the time frame, what the goals of the actual client are. So the blitz may be appropriate if there's a short time frame, they just want to get stuff out there. Wouldn't necessarily advise that. And the big thing that we like doing is just forecasting up front. So actually saying, what's the cost per acquisition, what's the cost per clicks, and just draw out the funnels and just actually have some goals and actually forecast it up front. And then you've got something to compare it to as you actually run the campaign. I mean, my preference is always to start small and scale up once you have data. I mean, I'm not sort of ruling out sort of madmen entirely. I mean, I was a direct sales copywriter back in the day. You still need to use emotive creative to push people down the funnel. But that's all it's good for, really. Marketing's about selling the next step. That's all the creative piece is good for, and that sort of resonates.
Yeah, and Dickon, you've seen, you've worked with some very, very big companies. Do they just tend to blitz it, all their customers, bang, with some new product or whatever?
I think the benefit of bigger companies is the ability to have lots of specialists looking at different parts of this thing. I think what they don't do is bring them together enough. Yeah. So, and if they do bring them together, they probably don't bring them together in sort of creative forums. They probably come together for team meetings where one will talk about what they're doing and so on. Whereas actually you could have a really, I hate to use the word because it's overused, but agile kind of approach to having everyone that needs to make decisions in the same room. That's a creative play. We know what we're targeting, why we're doing it. We're taking a look at some of the negative metrics, so things like promoter scores and so on, and how that's going. So what, we blitz this thing, we watch that come down. That in 2 months' time means people don't visit our stores. So the answer is sort of there is a lot of focus on the right sorts of things, not enough coordination, I think.
James, do you find that the companies you work for, they have the right kind of debate within their management about the degree of personalisation in their marketing?
I think the debate goes, how can we do more? I think the debate is usually very one-sided because it can be more finance-driven than, and let's be honest, digital marketing is a spreadsheet-based exercise. It is a case of going through and optimizing the hell out of a campaign to make it work. The brand element tends to be within a marketing team. That, my personal experience in Jules Clothing was myself and the marketing director, me as the multi-channel director, and him were constantly having that debate around what is the right balance of creative messaging with the level of personalization. I'm going, well, I'm getting 6-to-1 ROI out of this. I want to do 20 times more. And he's like, well, but that's because it's got a 15% off and free P&P offer in now. Well, that's one side. It's giving me a really good ROI. And that happens a lot. Whether the outcome is then balanced towards the customer, I don't think is necessarily there yet.
So how do you get the outcome balanced more towards the customer, Marcus? What's the technique? Is there a magic formula?
There's no magic formula. I mean, I do lean more on the mathsmen side of things. So it is just getting as granular as possible. Almost going to that one-to-one and just testing actually what works with them. And that's the only way it's got to be.
And do enough companies do that testing?
No, they don't, which is, and partly it's down to the laziness factor, partly due to the lack of experience. But I mean, being fairness to marketers, that's what Dickon says, it's just moving so quickly. And there's new types of tech coming out all the time. I was speaking to a friend who works in an agency out in California, and apparently they've got this way of layering called kinetic targeting. And you might like this, Martin. So it's the angle that you hold your mobile phone. So if I'm sitting here, then you can I'm in a particular type of mood. If I'm walking, I'm holding it like this. If I'm lying back on the bed, I'm holding it at a different angle. So you can layer that over as well. If I'm lying in bed, I want to be shown a certain type of ad. If you layer it with different customer information, demographic information, and so on. I mean, we mentioned this before, and James is very sceptical. It sounds like
I'm very sceptical. I mean, come on, is this just a crazy Californian thing?
I'm just worried how many
love
honey ads I'm going to be presented lying in bed watching Netflix. But there's
your wife watching then.
Let's move on.
Yes.
No, but it does kinetic sit in the same thing as agile and disruptive and those kind of things. It's it may work definitely in some industries.
But once again you just explore it, and I think you just move.
You test it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And I think that's it. It's not a silver bullet, but it is that just believing to try and get to the hyper personalisation, to the one-to-one, to sort of stealing something from you, Mark, saying everyone is unique and trying to do that because it's right person, right message, right time, right emotional state. Let's get that involved as well.
Yeah.
It's really, and make it seamless to me as the consumer, because I won't feel alienated at that point. If it ticks all those boxes and it's really helping me, that's great. And I think perhaps the creative bit in there needs to be of value and of service rather than the bombarding piece of just repetition.
So there are bits of the marketing mix where testing is now completely normal, isn't it? So A/B testing of different ad types and so on.
100%.
But I worry about that because
Sure, bring your mic up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, great. So A/B testing of content on sites and so on. I worry about that though because that's the exact opposite of personalisation. That is, how do we make this the best average it can be for most people that are going to see it? But I think when you get to personalisation, the assumption is anything we can do to improve personalisation is good.
Yes.
And therefore we will just pump it in more and more and more and more of that to the point where you've lost control of what's going on down here. I was talking to a Google engineer a couple of years back who was saying they couldn't tell you how an ad appears on via their targeting kind of solutions.
Yeah.
They could not tell you why it was there. They could tell you all the processes it went through to get there and why it's probably a good outcome, and they can show the numbers to show that it gets clicked more often and that kind of thing. They don't know how it got there, but we got this going on all the time. We're feeding this funnel, this ever more sophisticated funnel with all kinds of stuff that seems to make sense, and we've got no real understanding what's going on down here.
Yeah. No, I mean,
arguably.
Arguably, but I think ultimately you just go back to the bottom line and we just keep pushing that direction.
Yeah,
and I hear what you're saying.
Then you keep annoying me with ads that...
But I'd argue I'm doing it wrong then. Yeah, that's the point.
I
think if you feel annoyed, then it's not personalised.
Yeah,
right. But there is that bit of cohort. So you've got the cluster, the cohort, the personal.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we're in that cohort piece of, if I can group a number of people together that within reason it makes sense on average to those people.
Sure.
As a retailer, I'm going to think effort, return, that's great.
Yeah.
The bit which I think we have to keep plugging away and challenging our boards, challenging our management is, right, I've got this amount of data now, give me the time and the effort to actually drill down and say, out of these cohorts, how can I now make it personal? Because the returns will be infinitesimal. They will be significantly better. Do we have, I talk about, large businesses designed a platform in the 80s, implemented it in the 90s, and it's too expensive to get out of in the noughties. But there is that bit of the great thing about today is there are loads of agile businesses that can plug into your systems to hopefully allow you to augment the data you have and start to say, how do I move from cohort to being personal? And I think that's asking the question of our businesses to give us the time and the ability to do that.
I'm getting the impression from our conversation that actually most retailers are not actually properly prepared for delivering an engaging experience, whether it be in store or online. I mean, is that a fair judgment, or do you think that some are actually managing to do that, but for most there's still a long way to go?
I think for me that comes back to Dickens' point about things are moving so quickly. The customer's perception of experience, that lowest common denominator of what you expect out of a brand is moving so quickly. You're a small business, you have a chain of 5 or 6 stores, people are imprinting the John Lewis experience, of which, to be quite honest, I still believe they do an incredible job. The likes of Shop Direct, for example, brilliant tailored customer communications. They spend a lot of time on personas and their innovation labs. Smaller businesses are being imprinted with that similar mindset that their customers expect that from them. Click and collect, next day delivery. So they're having to try and compete with that pace of change. Which means that they can't always look at that tiny level of detail. They don't have the headroom, the capacity, the budgets often to get down to the detail because they're trying to cope with that change in customer expectations.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I was just going to say, so we talked about John Lewis partnership and their announcement this morning, and I haven't had a chance to really look into what they've been saying. But there is the suggestion that they're not keeping pace with this promotional kind of landscape. I think the other problem is there's so many pressures on businesses. I believe that if they've lost all of their profit, it's probably got more to do with the fact that middle class confidence in buying stuff has collapsed in the run up to Brexit. I can't prove that, but there's an awful lot of signs of it. I was in a car dealership the other day. My brother was buying a flash car, wanted me to go with him for his reveal and pickup sort of thing. Talking to the guy that was selling it, I said, I saw there was a bump in car sales last month. He said, don't believe it. There was a pickup in car sales. It's because everybody's trying to clear the lot so they can bring the new models in. Happens every year. It's got nothing to do with our sales in this business. It's Mercedes dealership. Nothing to do with that at all. We're not selling anything. So you know what I mean? There's so many things going on. So maybe what JLP are doing is absolutely right. They're just the wrong time in history to actually demonstrate some numbers at the end of the day that helps them to demonstrate that they did the right things in the first place.
And they do try and get to that level of personalisation that they feel is right for that customer, even down to the curation of the brands that go in the store. Personalisation starts even at the fundamental level. Do we have the right product and the right and people in our business?
All of us middle class people love them still. Yeah. We still go into their stores, shop in their Waitrose, right?
Allegedly.
Well, anyway.
Okay, let's imagine, and I'm sure there's some people here who might be coming new to this in some way, but if you are a company that is new to personalization and you want a successful, seamless journey for you and for your customers, what are the tools or the providers that you should be looking to help? James.
Okay, so I think there's a few in the market that ultimately I think are going in the right direction, and it won't be just one provider. So anyone who says they have a one-stop shop, me personally, I don't think that's necessarily the right answer. So you have, there are companies out there such as Nosto. They're a really strong recommendation business. The level of data they have around product and that customer demographic now allows them to move into, they've done Facebook remarketing using personalized product before. They are now starting to do on-site personalization. Rich relevance, classic business, it all comes around the recommendations piece. There are guys such as Ampliance. There's a really good bunch of guys here called Increasingly that actually do product bundling to drive up average order value. So for me, it's coming back to the core KPIs. Before you go and look for a provider, go back to your core KPIs and say, what is personalization to do? It's to drive the bottom line. It's to drive profit, not necessarily revenues. It's to drive average order value or lifetime value. Those are the three metrics for me that will change the demographic of the business. Through that, customer satisfaction and net promoter score can't be changed. So therefore, looking to providers, you're going to need a data provider to make sure they can pull together the data from your systems and provide it to an engine that then personalizes and recommends that product and experience to that customer. And then you need not a research business, but you need a strong analytics curve to say, actually, are we not just proving that the personalization is driving an increase in the metrics we set, but is the level of personalization we're offering disenfranchising or adding value to our customer experience? So I don't think there's a provider that offers all those things. It's looking to the business and third parties to say, actually, how do I find those three pillars?
Okay, so no one-stop shop, but Marcus, if someone were to come to you and you were the first, Fountain were the first organization that they'd come to, would you then be recommending other companies?
Oh, I'd help them build a tech stack, and I'd probably start with the basics. B2C. Okay, let's leverage lookalike audiences on Facebook, Google custom audiences. But actually, if you have a relationship with Google directly, or you go with a premier partner agency, they've got lots of quite exciting betas that are coming out at the minute to really help you personalize it. So I'll go to the big two, obviously, and just leverage what they've got if you're starting out. But I echo what James says, just draw out your funnel. Literally it's a spreadsheet job, and not enough people in marketing are on the spreadsheets. It just amazes me. They're talking about activities and not outcomes. Begin with the end in mind. What's the cost per acquisition, cost per click on different channels, conversion rate required, and work your way through that funnel. But leverage the big two to start off with, and then start adding different bits to the stack, stuff that you may see here.
And Dickon, are big companies very good at that, at actually picking and choosing, or do big companies want an easy solution? They go to one company and you say, organise the whole personalisation thing for us.
Well, it's a bit of a variety actually. So I work now at Capgemini, and they've actually got an enormous tech practice that can help you to build out that capability, or indeed to run that on your behalf. And then
so that would be a one-stop shop. I mean, you wouldn't recommend anyone else?
Not exactly, because every single tech company you can think of is a partner of Capgemini. So there might be some sort of stitching together in the middle of this thing, but all the technology will be provided by the big technology players. All of the software will come from those people. I know James does a lot of work, I know, in Shopify. It's a nice example of an environment designed to plug these tools in fairly seamlessly, so you pick it up like an app, as you would on an app store, and kind of plug it in. I think that's the ideal thing, because technology changes, moves on. You want to bring the apps in that you want to use. You want to let them go when you don't think that they're the most appropriate thing anymore. I think the one thing I think we should see more of is surfacing data. So not just, I've got a great app that's going to get my ads to some people and they're going to convert, but I'm understanding a bit more about the customers that are converting, the ones that aren't converting, and how I can understand how I play that back into my product and pricing and my development of new services and all those kinds of things. So that would be my sort of suggestion, is how can you get more visibility over this stuff. You use a thing called Funnel.io to make some cross-channel comparisons.
Yeah, that's a nice dashboard.
That's a great little app for quickly understanding how you're performing in different parts of the digital channel sort of environment. There are various bits and pieces.
Okay, right. Any questions? Anyone got any particular questions you'd like to put to the team here?
So I think it comes up on the screen. You see.
Oh, sorry. We got yes, absolutely, brilliant. How do you differentiate successful personalization from segmentation? Successful personalization from segmentation.
Two very different things. So segmentation for me drives personalization. They are not the same thing. So segmentation is the ability to identify the customers that make sense to then personalize to.
Yes.
Often what happens is a business will turn around and say, we need to sell more red dresses. How do we find and personalize people to people that want to buy more red dresses? Well, first start with your segmentation, understand those that have a propensity to buy red dresses, those that buy in a particular size, etc., and then present them with the right product at the right time. It comes back to traditional marketing methods. And that's the difference for me between personalization and segmentation. One's an input, one's an output.
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree. So we used to do a lot of segmentation, and we would get closer to personalisation by doing multiple segmentation. So we'd understand your attitude, we'd understand the sorts of things you tend to buy, we'd understand the specific sort of view that you have towards pricing. We layer that down, and we get to a pretty sort of sophisticated model, even though each layer was quite kind of clunky. My opinion is we're not doing enough of that, because actually so the personalisation bit is different. It's at this moment in time, of all of the things I've got to offer, what would make sense for this individual based on their recent activities, etc. And we can make a really good moment happen in theory. But at the top level, that segmentation was useful because it got the business thinking about the different core audiences and therefore how to go about being inventive on their behalf and so on. So they're different things, but I do think that we need to get a bit back to a point where we're doing some more strategic planning around what we're doing with the rest of the stack.
Yeah, I mean, successful personalisation, I think just be ambitious, keep pushing to get to that one-to-one. And you might think, well, that's hard and we can't do it yet and so on, but just keep going. Keep leveraging the tech and believe it's possible, because if you don't, someone else, one of your competitors will, and they'll start taking market share. But I agree with what you guys say, that the segmentation drives the personalisation, so it's not an either or. Okay.
Another question, what's the one bit of advice that you would give to anyone starting a retail business today? You
hire Digital Blueprint and get yourself on Shopify. Is that the advice?
Yeah, well, two things. Be careful that you're not opening a department store at the moment. That for me is one thing. No, opening a retail business today, what we see with a lot of businesses coming to either ourselves or Marcus is around the level of planning to understand whether in fact you can cost effectively drive traffic to your retail business. Because many businesses go into a funding round or a VC and say, we're going to get 180,000 customers in the next 12 months, and they haven't looked at cost per clicks, conversions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Marcus, what's involved in that planning?
Oh, you need to know what your cost per acquisition is. You need to base it on lifetime value. And you need to do a massive gap analysis. The amount of people come to me and say, right, we want to start selling this because it's going well as selling it on Amazon. I say, okay, here are the keywords you want to run on. Let's click on some ads and let's look at the quality of that landing page, look at that proposition. Are you ready to compete there? So many people think that running digital marketing campaigns are in a silo, just buy some traffic, but those users are actually clicking on different ads and making choices and decisions. And actually most retailers online on the e-com will probably make a loss, with the first sale. So actually you need a very clear strategy to be upselling, and they'll probably only start making profit on the third or fourth sale. So it's that whole forecasting piece. How many customers do you want? How much you want to pay for them? For people just starting up, I say, look, there's a plugin called Keywords Everywhere. You put it in, any search term you put in, it will tell you the volume and the cost per click. The average conversion rate of an e-commerce website is 1%. So multiply that cost per click for a keyword by 100. That's what you're looking at a basic cost per acquisition. Real basic fag packet calculation. I showed that to some people who want to start a retail e-com, and they're like, wow, I don't want to pay that for a new customer. That's much more than my average order value. I said, okay, but that's where you're playing.
Yeah.
So you've got to take it very seriously. And too often they go to an agency who just says, yeah, we can do it, we can send some traffic, and they haven't forecast and they don't really care if it's going to work or not. They'll just take your money.
So you have to be prepared right at the beginning to spend a lot of money in order to establish what your market is and what your audience is. And 1 out of 100 doesn't seem to be a lot, but that's the average.
That's the average. Also, you see better e-commerce websites converting
absolutely.
at 5, right? But you're not going to start there. I mean, it'd be great if you could. Yeah. It's not necessarily spending a lot of money, but it's having a realistic plan and crunching the numbers and just saying, here's my cost per acquisition, here's the cost per click, and you can get that without spending any money at all. You can work that out. And here's the conversion rate required. And if it's more than 1 or 2%, it's going to, your cost per acquisition is too low. You're going to have to put it up to compete in the marketplace. Because there are people who have been selling these products already for 10 years and they're ahead of you. You need to catch up and have a more advanced strategy. So I'm being quite blunt because I see people all the time saying, oh, I'll set up an e-commerce website, I'll get some stock in, I'll send some traffic and see what happens. But there's a reason why so many small businesses fail. Do the planning up front. It doesn't cost anything apart from time.
Yeah. Look, we've had a fascinating discussion and everyone came here to hear about advances in personalization, get some ideas on the development of personalization. But let me ask each of you to wrap up. What are the, in 1, 2, 3 sentences, what's the takeaway that you would like people to have from this discussion? Marcus,
believe it's possible to go towards ultimate one-to-one or unique personalization. Just keep pushing towards that. But the big thing with all the stuff you're doing, optimization is about prioritization. The Pareto principle, we hear it a lot, the 80-20 rule, but it does apply in digital marketing and in retail and so on. So really work on nurturing and pushing great personalization, great content to your most profitable customers based on lifetime value. Get that and really focus on those guys and nurture them, because that'll be the quickest way to taking market share and growth.
Okay. Dickon?
I think it's sort of pull your head up. So sort of obsessed with the latest tech play and how that's rolling out for you and so on. Try and come back a little bit, do a bit of planning, see if you can get some data out of these solutions instead of just pumping content into them, and see if you can start to stitch that together into more of a coherent story about how you're going to achieve some goals at the end of the day. I don't think there's enough of that going on. I think there's an assumption that the tech is very smart, it will deliver results. That's all you need to know. And actually the tech gets sold on that basis, typically wrongly. So I think it's more pull back up.
James, final word?
3 key things. KPIs, set them, plan. Second thing is be prepared for a long journey. Personalization is not a overnight success story. It is because customers change throughout the entire journey. You may have a customer at the beginning of your journey think one thing, they will have a completely different decision process with you later down the way. And the third thing is, do not be afraid to challenge your own business to say, we need more time and we need more detail to deliver what ultimately customers now expect. And we need to make sure that you as a business are comfortable that, as Dickon said, lift your head up.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what competitors are doing and really truly understand what the customer is expecting of you at that point you're delivering.
Well, James, Marcus, Dickon, thanks very much indeed. I hope you found it a useful discussion. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Martin.
Thank you.